Oh my goodness. I can't believe we've done the whole
I am emotional.
book. You know what, Isabel?
Jessica,
Thank you for doing this with me.
I've had so much fun.
This has been really awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Izzy,
And I'm Jessica.
and welcome back to the final episode of
The greatest genre. Well, it's the final episode of season 1.
That's true.
We will
I'm getting ahead of myself.
absolutely be continuing this wonderful journey of Sarah J. Maas.
Way too much fun to stop now. We are going to be today rereading, dissecting, and fully fangirling over the final 5 chapters of ACOTAR Book 1, chapters 42 through 46 of A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yes, they may be the final chapters, but they are certainly not dull in any way.
No, a lot happening here, which we are going to get into. The first portion of today's episode is going to be completely spoiler-free. We're going to be talking about just the events that happen in those chapters and previous chapters, also in previous episodes that you have heard from us. The second portion of today's episode is going to be spoilers abound. As usual, it is lengthy.
It's rich. It is a rich spoiler section today, so definitely going to want to make sure that you tune in for that if you have read.
Yes, if you have read ACOTAR, Crescent City, and Throne of Glass, and if you have not, please do not tune in.
Do not tune in, use the time to read, and then come back to us when you're ready.
Yes, exactly. Everything is going to be on the table in those episodes. So quick housekeeping notes before we begin. Firstly, an adult content warning.
Yes. Once again, like the series itself, this podcast does from time to time contain adult language and adult content. So if that is not something that you are comfortable with, then perhaps this is not the podcast or the episode for you, but we hope that it is, because we are so excited to dive into these final chapters of A Court of Thorns and Roses, the first book that we both read in the SJM universe.
The one that got me out of my reading slump.
This is just a really cool full circle moment,
emotional.
I feel like, for the two of us.
I know.
So while we're talking about the end of season 1, sort of the culmination of this first venture into the world of podcasting, we thought we would give you all kind of a fun announcement about what is coming next for the greatest genre. If you are a fan of SJM, you will know that there's a very important date approaching in just a couple of very short months that is going to...
My tummy literally just did a somersault.
It's going to be here before you know it, and of course, what we are talking about is January 30th, the release of
A House of Flame and Shadow.
Crescent
oh my god,
City.
I am not okay.
Crescent City 3, potentially book 3 of 4, so potentially the penultimate installation of the Crescent City world.
But that's a conversation for another time.
And so in light of that, season 2 of The Greatest Genre is going to focus on a reread of Crescent City. And we are going to be rereading both books between now and January 30th, so that we will be ready for the release of House of Flame and
Although
Shadow.
it is important to note that there are simply not enough hours in the day to do it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to change up our format a little bit, and so more to come on that. We're gonna have to do a little bit of.
Do not know yet, these books are 800 pages
They are
a
long,
piece.
and
They are dense. They are beautiful and breathtaking in all of the ways that you would expect from any kind of SJM book.
They're incredible.
But it will not be a 5 chapter at a time situation.
No, and we will also have to get creative with somehow covering more ground and yet still keeping our discussions. We're gonna try and keep it around an hour for you guys. We will do our best, but we also want to make sure as we wait
that we do it, it's due diligence.
Yes, because of course, as we wait for this new book to come out, we are digging and sifting for every possible Easter egg that she could have left us.
Like Blue's Clues over here.
So the spoiler sections of those episodes are going to be thorough. They're going to be meaty. So we will keep you posted as we flesh out exactly what our formula is going to be for season 2, but we are so excited to get into that reread.
And then one additional little announcement, we are going to be doing a short, maybe a 20-30 minute episode recap of the recent Sarah J. Maas interview,
which was that was basically as exhilarating as reading any of her books.
Jessica and I just have all capital text messages to each other. It was the most chaotic I have like 4 pages of notes. I don't even understand half of them.
Oh my God. Yeah, my phone was about to die, so it was plugged in and then I was watching it on my laptop and trying to text you and take notes
was
all
all
at the
too
same
much.
time. And it was just very stressful, but it was, again, very exhilarating. So yes, we are going to be doing a little mini episode with our favorite takeaways and digging a little deeper into some of the little nuggets that we pulled out.
That'll be a fun one.
I'm very excited about it.
Again, don't tune in if you have not read everything.
Yeah, that will be rife with spoilers. There's really only one way to go about doing that. So there will be spoilers for that too. But I think that brings us back to
This episode.
And
A
other
reminder,
than
I think to keep things kind in the comments. We've had great luck with this so far.
keep things kind, and also while we're talking about spoilers, if you are going to do a spoiler in a comment, maybe at any point, maybe write spoiler in all caps and then do a few returns just to keep, keep other
It's
people
always
safe.
best to err on the side of caution.
Yes, I made a little bit of an error
Listen,
myself on TikTok this
you're new
week.
to TikTok.
I did not adequately preface the content with the spoiler warning. So I'm holding myself accountable.
Amazing. I forgive you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And then I'm sure at this point, if you guys have been listening before, you know these by now, but a quick reminder of all of our handles. We are on Instagram at _greatest genre, on Twitter at greatest genre, on TikTok at the greatest genre, and you can email us at thegreatestgenre@gmail.com. Etsy shop is going to be up at the end of the season. Hopefully when we release our final episode, we will be announcing the Etsy shop at the same time.
Very exciting. Just in time for the holidays, guys. You can get everyone greatest genre merch.
Yeah, I think that's honestly the best gift that someone could receive.
I mean, to my family, if you're listening, just pretend to be surprised.
And now, Jess, I think it is time to return to Prithian.
I think it is.
Let's go under the mountain and venture into chapters 42 through 46 of A Court of Thorns and Roses.
For the last time.
Oh my God, stop.
I'm getting big Princess Diaries 2 flashbacks when Mia is getting crowned. And they're like, the eagle is flying for the last time.
Where did that come from?
I told you, it's just happening in my head.
Amazing.
Anyways, we're going to do quick summaries
Right.
today because I have a feeling these discussions are going to
Be lengthy.
They're going to take a while. So, on Feyre's last night to live.
Skull.
Sláinte. On Feyre's last night to live, or so she believes, she's once again drugged and painted for the party. But in a slight twist, she ends up having a secret steamy makeout session with not one High Lord of Prithian, but 2.
Naughty Feyre.
I think that was SJM's little treat to all of us for having endured the last, 2 moons under the mountain. This, however, does take a little bit of an awkward turn when they are caught by Amarantha and, the rest of the crowd. Also, I would like to reiterate that this was one makeout session after another. It was not, in fact, all 3 of them
at once.
at the same time.
No, she didn't bless us with that.
Yet.
I'm not mature enough for you to say things like that.
So that kind of, brings the party to a screeching halt. She goes back down to her cell. She and Rhysand have a very interesting one-on-one conversation. And then the next day dawns and the third trial has arrived. In my opinion, I think this is one of the most dark, psychologically cruel
I would agree with that.
things that Feyre has ever been faced with. She has to murder 3 innocent High Fae by stabbing them with an ash dagger in the heart. And she has to do this one at a time.
It's all horribly drawn out.
It's horribly drawn out. We'll get to this. Okay. The third one, spoiler alert, turns out to be Tamlin.
Woof.
Really tough. But Feyre manages to solve the final little piece of the curse when she realizes that Tamlin's heart is actually made of stone, and so it will not be able to be pierced by the dagger.
Cannot wait to get into that with you.
So she stabs him, but he doesn't die. He is, however, incapacitated for a while. Amarantha is furious that Feyre has cracked this code. She says that Feyre never specified when I had to free Tamlin if she, completed all the challenges, so I can free them whenever I choose. I only had to free them immediately if Feyre solved the riddle, which she still up to this point has not done. Instead of freeing anybody, she begins to torture Feyre. Really, really brutally. It is drawn out and intense, and SJM spares us nothing. Tamlin and Rhys both make feeble attempts to stop Amarantha because they still don't have their powers. She still has
their powers. Mm-hmm.
And it is not until Feyre finally solves the riddle, basically with her dying breath, that the curse finally breaks. Tamlin gets his powers back, kills Amarantha, but at this point, Feyre is
in
dead.
fact dead.
Feyre has died, and she's having an out-of-body experience.
It's like a little piece of her is tethered still to this world.
It's giving a Horcrux like a tiny bit. But yes, so Feyre is like having an out-of-body experience. She's watching
the scene
She's watching this unfold. She's watching Tamlin kill Amarantha, and then she watches one by one as Tamlin sort of cradles her dead body. One by one, all of the High Lords approach her and Tamlin, and they offer this little drop, this bright sort of spark of magic.
A bud?
No. We're not calling it that on this podcast. Feyre is miraculously brought back to life as a High Fae. Even while still reeling with the trauma of the final task, this adjustment to her new body, her new senses, and everything else that has just happened under the mountain, she still has a very emotional reunion with Tamlin, and they do eventually return home to the Spring Court together after a brief interlude with Rhys.
Yeah, there's a conversation that happens before he
very brief
disappears to wherever it is that he goes off to, I'm sure, his home court.
So like I said, so that is the very high level sort of quick summary of what happened in these chapters. So now let's rewind all the way back
to chapter 42.
Really what we need to do is just actually be able to talk about
okay, so first of all, walking into this throne room, again, dressed in...
She's in pink. Which is just not her color.
No. She's not really a pink... Well, she's not really a girly girl. In general. That's besides the point.
Elaine wears pink.
So she's standing there next to Tamlin. Well, first of all, how to say it? A couple of thoughts here.
Yeah.
He finally gets the courage to come and stand next to her. But I just did have to say, has that ever happened to you when you're standing in a room with someone and like you kind of brush hands and it's the hottest thing in the world and there's this much
and you're like, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Is it going to happen?
And then he walks away and he just looks back at her and I was like, the first time I read this, I was unwell.
I know, and Tamlin gets a lot of flack for this, but I just have to say, and maybe this is a toxic trait of mine, but if my man did not take this opportunity to do exactly what Tamlin had done, and instead was just like, I want you to leave, like, get out, leave the mountain.
No, I'm still on the side that I think it was wrong.
But realistically, I know myself, and that would really piss me off.
No, and I know you too, and I agree.
That would really piss me off. Like in my brain... Like, if I were in Tamlin's shoes...
You're very passionately motivated by things, though.
Yeah, I mean, I would have at least been like, okay, fine, if you're going to get me out, but can we have a kiss?
The issue was, I don't think that, like, that was...
He was never going to be able to get her out anyway. That was never going to happen.
Fair enough. He could have tried.
And they both would have died?
Well, she wouldn't have died if she had been out.
We both just agreed that was never going to work.
So you don't think that he should have made any kind of effort rather than like the 1 minute that he finally gets to see her after all of this, after everything that she's endured, rather than even speak to her, he just pushes her up against a wall.
Well, he could have used some words, sure, but like, and Feyre, I think like the first time I read this through, headspace.
Yes, and the first time I read this through, I was like, hot. And even the second, I can objectively see it, like reading it again, hot.
Yes.
However, I do agree that I think that maybe there should have been a few more words that transpire between them and some kind of...
He could have at least apologized for not having come to see her.
completely ignoring her at that.
Okay, then this is our common ground. This is where we meet in the middle, because you're right. It would have been much richer if he had grabbed her by the face, be like, "How could you be so stupid? Like, why would you do this? Why would you do this?"
Acknowledgement, and then because it was kind of like
rather
this trope
than just
that you and I both love. It's the last night together
right.
trope that is a problem.
Oh God, just really clouds your judgment. really, really.
So it's like I agree with levels of what you're saying, but not the entire thing. And
no, I would agree. Like some dialogue, I think probably was appropriate.
Right,
would have been appropriate.
Right,
and there was none. So there, I will agree with you.
Also, small note: has his scent ever been described as rain and earthen? That was literally the first time I've ever heard that in these books, and I feel like in the SJM verse, she always describes.
Did you search it on your audiobook?
Mm-hmm. Rain and earthen. It's like the only time that she says that, which I thought was a weird time to introduce that, but whatever. But then a certain High Lord of the Night Court interrupts them, and Tamlin just does what Rhys instructs, which I thought, is it because he's afraid? Does he not want Feyre to see him and what can only be a loss against anything he'll try to do to Rhys? I found it interesting that he just complied right away, because right now they're alone. Amarantha's not watching, and
I mean, it's the same question we've all been asking ourselves this entire time under the mountain: is why is he behaving this way? Why is he so afraid?
Of him.
He cannot seem to summon any kind of courage to really defy her until he gets all of his powers back. I don't think he believes he can do anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he doesn't try to get her out.
In the heat of the passion, of this moment when he's got her in his cross, that would have been the moment.
But I think that's why he doesn't say anything either, because I think he
just goes back to being a mute.
I think he believes that he has already been defeated and he's just trying to take what he can get.
I did like in this moment that Rhys challenged Feyre and was like, how could you be so stupid in this moment? Because it's kind of what you were talking about last episode. But she is smart.
He scolds her pretty sharply for this, and then out of nowhere also pins her after sending Tamlin away.
Yes. Like a naughty schoolboy.
Like a naughty schoolboy. Then he scolds her, and she kind of she stands her ground, as she tends to do with Rhysand. And then all of a sudden he sort of stops mid-sentence.
His head whips around. He sees something. Well, he knows something's about to happen that she doesn't know, and he claims her. That's her words, not mine.
And I know that we've had debates on this podcast about what's hot and what's not. Mm-hmm. This was very hot.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
So we've learned about Rhys that he's a good kisser.
Yeah. For sure. Mm-hmm. Also, a quick note there that he made all the paint disappear off of Tamlin's hands when that happened, and he made it appear on his own.
So just in case everybody involved at this point wasn't already fully aware, Rhys is not on Amarantha's side.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Not even close. And in this chapter especially, he all but admits to her. He's like, this happens in a few, in the next scene.
In the next scene.
He's like, you should go and tell her this. If you were smart, I am sitting here confessing to you that I am not on her side, and I am actively working against her. Do with that information what you will.
Right. And this is kind of what I was struggling with Feyre for the last episode or two, was her sort of refusal to acknowledge Rhys for the ally that he is.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
a trope in every single book, though. It's you're so wise to everything except for what is right in front of you. Mm. And it is, and I get it because it's so dramatic fun. Effect. It's so fun to read about, but at the same time, sometimes you just want to, excuse me, could you just wake up? Also, just very small note that when Amarantha does find Rhys and Feyre entwined, and they go back into the throne, into the throne room. Once again, Feyre is looking at Tamlin, and he's just shut down again. Nothing. And that would have been the moment. Don't make her feel guilty. I feel like
Feyre feels guilty,
and and she's starting to feel a lot of that. And I had a little note later on here where it was after she's turned into a high fae, and she's like, I should smile. I should try and be cheerful for him for what he's just been through. And it's I'm sorry. What about what you've just been through? Don't be worrying about his feelings in this moment. You're the one that just had to kill two innocent people. You shouldn't be worrying about the way that he is feeling right now. I mean, to an extent you should.
Well, and I
course.
think she was saying also in general, she's like, I know that I should feel victorious because Amarantha's dead. I defeated her and technically I won. But all I can feel is like shame and guilt and self-loathing for everything that just happened. And I have notes on that as well, you know, a little bit further down in this episode. But
a little bit about the moment between Rhys and Feyre back in her cell.
Yeah, so Feyre gets hauled back to her cell after Amarantha very gleefully, you know, turns around and she's like, oh, look, Tamlin, look at these humans with their fickle hearts.
She keeps using the word inconstant or I don't know.
Well, because that's what Jurian did to Clythia.
My main takeaway from this scene was that this is the first time that we see actual vulnerability from Rhys.
Yes,
it's in stark contrast.
The bravado, the confidence, the sensuality,
it's all
the
gone.
Sarcasm. It's all, he's just kind of stripped bare. He comes to her cell and he is just sort of venting, I guess, for lack of a better word.
And quiet.
And she's like, why are you here? Why are you, just leave me alone.
And he basically says that, well, because no one's going to believe anything that you say, that I say to you. Like, no one's going to listen to you.
Exactly.
He does admit that literally this entire time he has been trying to work Tamlin into a senseless fury, is the word that he used, which maybe explains one or two of the things that he has done.
Yeah, sure.
To get him to boil over the edge,
well, and
I
it
think.
also certainly makes you wonder what is building up there. I mean, maybe if you have a lot of rage building up and you are trying to keep a tight lid on it, you sometimes have to go to the extreme of like nothing. Like you cannot let anything show or it's all going to show.
He also said one thing here that really pissed me off. He was like, the only reason that I haven't taken you to my bed yet is because it's his claim to innocence. Like if Tamlin is ever going to, like, and Tamlin won't have a reason to fight him. And I'm like, what about her opinion?
Well, I think what
so
he was
too.
implying was that like, he's like, I'm not going to outwardly actually try and seduce you. Or like, I'm not actually going to make a move. You know, I wouldn't necessarily read that line to the letter. I think that's just Rhys's confidence coming through that says like, if I really wanted you, I could have you.
You would have no self-defense against this. I think he actually gestures to himself at one point.
Oh, well, that's
besides the obvious.
No. So Feyre says, why did Amarantha make you her whore?
Yes.
And he says, besides the obvious, which I thought was great.
Yeah, no, it was a lovely little Rhys Feyre banterous moment that we've come to enjoy.
Was, and it I don't know about you, but it made me think of some other characters that we can't talk about yet. But having this as a reread moment, it was a wonderful peek into what we know of who Rhys really is.
Which we're starting to see in these chapters. Another one of the main takeaways from this conversation was she finds out that Tamlin didn't tell her about the Night Court murdering his family. And given what we're supposed to know about the Night Court at this point, like he doesn't hesitate to say that the Night Court is an enemy court earlier on in these books.
And he lets Lucian say things like they're savage killers,
that monsters,
they're
all
ruthless.
Of them. And it's like, so why wouldn't that already fit into your narrative if they had killed? Like, why would you withhold that piece of information?
Yeah, so this is...
It fits into the narrative that Tamlin has explained about the Night Court thus far, and he left out that very, very large piece of information. All he said it was an enemy court.
And so this is a pretty big revelation that Rhys shares with Feyre, and she is processing the fact that there's actually a lot of very emotional history, not just between the courts, but between Rhys and Tamlin,
which we'll definitely get into in the spoiler section a little bit.
So that's a very rich little hint. And it's a moment too where Tamlin could have shared that with her, that level of detail. It had nothing to do with the curse. He was not bound. And I think even then he felt like he was trying to shield her from the violence of his past or of the world of Prythian in general. It's just Tamlin's nature seems to be to just shield her. And I think that is actually I think
that's part of it, but also for me it was like, what is there a reason that you aren't telling me this because there's a part of you in this story that you don't want? Like that's how I read it.
It could be that too. It could be that too. But I think even then, I do think that's kind of a human...
Protect those you love.
I was going to say a human tendency, but I actually think it's a human weakness. Because anytime that you know something, a truth, that you withhold from someone that you love and you convince yourself you're doing it to spare them, what you're really doing is just being too afraid.
And you end up most of the time
And
hurting
it
them in the long
never,
run.
ever works out that you actually spare them anything. Because when the truth does come out, as it tends to do, not only is the truth hard, but your, I don't know, deceit is a harsh word, but just, your lack of transparency is then also something that they have to bear and process.
I love that note, and I want to talk about it more in the spoiler section.
Great.
And then we finish off this chapter by, like I said before, Reese literally looking at her being like, this is it. I've just told you that I'm working against Amarantha. If you were clever, you would go and you would tell her everything. And the fact that she doesn't is telling.
Well, and he also tells Feyre, which I think is really important. He says, our world is in your hands. The fate of our world is in your hands. And he's like,
uses the word illiterate human.
and he's just kind of like the irony here, right?
Right.
Like, this is just kind of insane. And
Poor Feyre. I don't envy her. That's for sure.
well, and she is so beaten down physically, emotionally, mentally, even
Sis needs a break.
even this brief moment that she almost had with Tamlin, has been ripped away from her. Everything has been ripped away from her. And now she's got Reese saying, this is it, tomorrow.
As if she didn't already feel enough pressure.
Tomorrow, it's either we all are screwed or
you succeed.
or you, an illiterate human,
Save
is
us.
going to somehow
And
save
tomorrow
all of us.
does indeed arrive. And
Yes,
she
it
walks
does.
into that throne room with, I've just got to say, with her original clothing, which she says smell bad, but I bet it was worse than bad. It's pretty gross. Haven't been washed in 2 months. Had tunic in her.
But she wasn't wearing it. She hadn't been wearing it. Had she?
Yeah, but she was journeying under the mountain in it. And I think her first beating from the Ator came while she was wearing it. They haven't been washed. And my first note here is when she's walking into the throne room, I think that we have the same one. Yep. And she's walking into the throne room and everyone's partying for her. And as a sign of respect, the crowd does this. And hello, Hunger Games.
Hi, Katniss Everdeen. I immediately, that is just what I thought of.
I was like, first bullet
I said,
point.
chapter 43, Hunger Games salute flashback. That's what I have right here. And it's very somber.
It's a in stark contrast
to
with
the screaming, jeering sort of Colosseum type environment
from
that we're
was
used
like
to.
the first two challenges or trials or whatever they're called were more for sport almost, and I think that it was mostly, I think we agreed the lesser fairies were attending those. The High Lords definitely did for the second challenge as well, but it was a little more bloodthirsty. Although this one's pretty bloodthirsty too. For this one, it's like the High Fae are all here. It's like the culmination of this entire book.
Yeah, well, and I don't think anyone expected her to make it past the first, let alone the second. So now, it's like when a horse wins both legs of the Triple Crown, the first two.
Yep.
All of a sudden, everybody's watching the third one. So
exactly.
It's a very different mood. It's a very different environment when she walks in. It's basically dead quiet.
Yeah.
Amarantha asks her if she has
And
any
I have
last
a logistical
words.
question.
Sure.
Because I feel like you understand still at this point the curse better than I do. So she literally says to him, to his face, I love you. Is it too late?
Yeah, because
it's
the
too late,
deadline
right?
expired.
Okay, the deadline. Okay, that was my only question.
Yeah.
My only other question was when she says, pity, the answer is so lovely.
I know.
So in case you guys hadn't figured it out, which it's now, we're talking about these chapters so we can finally say it. The answer to the riddle is love.
Love.
Which, again, we've said in the spoiler section beforehand,
It's really hard.
literally as soon as I read this the first time, I was like, well, the answer is obviously love. Like, what?
But it can't be love because that would be like so obvious.
And then she's literally semi-giving her the answer.
The answer
when
is so
she's
lovely.
in her sing-song
which
evil-
is actually
Brilliant.
like, I kind of have a lot of respect for her in that moment as a villain.
Oh, God. I liked the line, she wishes she knew the name of one of the forgotten gods so she could beg them for absolution.
There are a couple of other just things in this moment before the trial begins or is even like revealed. She asks her if she has any last words. And Feyre makes what I thought to be a very moving profession of love in front of everyone. And
I was greeted with
and
nothing.
I think she,
Although that's for a reason.
And nothing happens. And the fact that who she thinks she's professing her love to is actually the Autor is so mean.
It's horrible.
It's so mean.
And the way she says it, even if, I think here's the line, I love you no matter what she says about it, no matter if it's only with my insignificant human heart. Even when they burn my body, I'll love
I will
you.
love you.
And then she starts crying. We're going to stop crying. And
No,
she
it was.
doesn't.
I
It's
had
very moving.
I had
yeah.
forgotten that moment, and I wanted to make a note there.
One of the things that she does this so beautifully.
Knows
Exactly what she's
really,
doing.
really well in that profession of love. It was simple and it was heartfelt, and Feyre really believes it is the last time she is going to get to tell Tamlin that she loves him, and I thought it was beautiful.
I agree. And then when these three hooded figures are placed in front of her, and she finds out that she has to kill all of them, which we won't even go into, like her internal monologue. It's horrible. Like it is
horrible. I have one tiny little note that happened, like before she realizes what the trial is. There's a lot of callbacks in these 5 chapters to the blue fairy scene.
Yes.
And Dying Alone. And actually the first one happened before she realizes.
Did that actually happen before? I missed that.
She doesn't call out the blue fairy, but she does, say, like, she sees Tamlin there. She sees, I actually think she might even see Rhys, but she just says, at least I won't die alone.
She goes, I had beaten her until now, fairly or not, and I would not feel alone when I died.
Yes.
I would not die alone. It was all I could ask for. And that's a beautiful callback to
It's
the blue fairy scene.
And it really struck me. It's the very first callback. And then I realized, reading through the rest of these chapters, there were
There's
actually
a
several.
lot of parallels
There was
to the
actually
blue fairy
several. And then
scene.
even at the very end, that final conversation between her and Rhys, when she asks him why he did what he did, one of the reasons he gives her is because he didn't want her to feel alone. And in that moment, she thinks of the blue fairy and her motivation to stand there and hold his hand as he died, which is a gorgeous. For many reasons we can
it's
discuss.
One of my favorites in this entire
section. It was a really significant moment that I had forgotten about, and it was a joy to reread.
So the stabbing of the 3 fairy, and the fact that they're young too, so they were being revealed one
and
at a
Amarantha
time.
tells her, and this is really Amarantha's true nature is really revealed here, in her hatred for humans, her disgust for them.
And she's saying it shouldn't even be hard for you.
She was like, what does
the
it
same
matter?
way it wasn't
She's
hard
like,
for Jurian.
Yeah, she'll say, she says, I'll tell you they're innocent, even though it doesn't matter to you.
It shouldn't make a difference.
And
And
it didn't matter.
It's so cruel.
It didn't matter to you when you killed Tamlin's sentinel. And it's like, okay, I hear you. And I hear your...
The circumstances were vastly different. She was literally hunting
but
for
it
her
was
family.
a wolf. It was a wolf.
Not a fairy that she knew of at the time, and she was trying to save her starving family. So, this is not a parallel that makes sense.
And it makes it hard for you to... And we had this conversation about, formidable villains, right?
It's so funny how on the reread, my opinion of Amarantha as a good villain has changed from... Because
and I really, really wanted her to be, and I guess it makes sense because it turns out that she's not going to be
she's not the big bad.
She's not the big bad. So, and this is her flaw. Her prejudice is so
deep,
intense that it prevents her from seeing reality. Mm-hmm. Her prejudice is her weakness at the end of the day because she's a fanatic about it. Her hatred of humans has become her religion, and she is a zealot.
Yep.
And it makes it...
And she offers up 3 innocent fairies, which by her own standards, she wouldn't have done if she valued fairy life as much as she says that she does against the humans. So it didn't really make sense to me. I agree with you.
No.
And just a note about SJM's writing. Does she know how to write the last 100 pages of a book or what? The descriptions of the stabbing and Feyre's emotions while it's happening and the wailing. It was the wailing of whoever was in the crowd for me was so upsetting.
The pleading, the begging, Feyre's internal struggle, the detail that Sarah goes into here.
Yeah, she does not hold back.
She does not hold back. She does not spare us anything. This is a horrible moment. And
it was like you were experiencing different types of death too, because with the first fairy, he was pleading to stay alive. whoever loved him in the crowd was also wailing, crying. And then the second fairy that she has to kill is almost embracing death. She starts reciting the same prayer,
which was the second callback to the blue fairy scene. And I absolutely had that note. And I thought this prayer, I reread this one a couple of times.
Me too.
Because I wish I knew more about who she was, because it almost seemed like the first fairy just seemed so scared of death, and you feel for him, and he's having a very normal reaction to it. And you're right, the second fae, the female,
has a different reaction to death.
She seems to be resigned to her fate. She seems to be uttering this prayer over and over again. And it's almost like I wonder if she is someone who has been watching Feyre's trials. Maybe she does believe that Feyre can break the curse, and so she is willing to be a sacrifice if it is for the greater good.
I also love that we got like an element of faith
here. I have notes about it. I said so, and I think it's an amazing piece now, knowing that Sarah studied religions. As part of this prayer, she talks about the afterlife, and she talks about an immortal land of milk and honey, which, if anyone has watched The Prince of Egypt besides us,
might I add, the most epic soundtrack that exists.
Oh, it's an incredible story. But or if you are familiar with
the story,
Exodus, you know that is what the God of the Hebrew people promised them when he comes to Moses and he says, "I will lead my people out of Egypt to a land flowing with milk and honey." I love when she ties in real religion and mythology and cultural elements into the story in a way that doesn't feel forced.
What makes the fantasy so real, and what makes us love it so much is because she has these like very well researched, deeply rooted realities that she weaves in to her fiction.
Yes, absolutely. No, I thought it was great. And so it begged the question for me, and I don't think we've really discussed it yet, and I have more notes about it. I can speak more freely about my theorizing in the spoiler section, but it did beg the question for me, what kind of afterlife do the Fae believe in? So I really can't discuss it any further because it requires me to talk about other books.
Tune in for episode 2. Episode 8.
Part 2.
Episode 9, part 2. And then, of course, the final Fae is revealed to be Tamlin, and she whips her head back, and the Tamlin next to Amarantha becomes the drama.
Her. Like,
it becomes the actor who is now like laughing at the whole situation, and this is when I think you and I have some similar qualms. First of all, I see the montage,
but it's too
as the memories of Tamlin. So she starts. She knows that she has to do this because it's either she kills herself.
Well, she falters and she looks at Amarantha, and Amarantha's like,
shouldn't be an issue.
And she's like, you kill Tamlin and you set him free, or you can offer up yourself.
And his entire court free. Or you kill yourself.
Or you offer up yourself and you end your own life. And Feyre is
just the epitome of cruelty.
Having this, once
crisis,
again, this internal
understandable
crisis. And it would be horrible. And I have two sort of equal reactions to this. One is I cannot imagine what this would feel like. An impossible situation. To be in,
which to her credit, she does dive into a little more and figure out.
Your mind would be frantic, and so I just have the most respect for her being able to sort of steel herself
and sift through what needs and
figure
come up with the answer that she has
and figure it out, figure out what to do. And the other side of me, which is where you and I think share a little bit of an eyebrow arch, is you can figure that out, but you still can't
figure
solve
out
the riddle.
Love.
When I'm scorned, I'm difficult to defeat.
It was just the most unrealistic thing for me. It's like, and I know it's a story, but remembering 2 offhand sentences, like I literally had to Command F in my digital copy to find the words stone, and it's mentioned twice.
I think when I read it, I was like, what do you mean he has a heart of stone?
And she's there for months. And the fact that she is able to, in the montage of hers and Tamlin's, which I can see in the Hulu show, if it ever happens, just the flashbacks of all the memories, and then suddenly she's like, heart of stone. Like, you picked up that? It's I'm sorry, but it's absolute nonsense.
We didn't.
No. Even while reading it, I was like, huh? Silly.
They're very obscure references. And so on the one hand, it's like, wow, okay, lots of respect to our girl Feyre for cracking that code. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, but seriously, you can't solve the riddle?
It was just, this is where it became a little unreal. I mean, I get it.
Unless the brain fog from Amarantha is still preventing her, and maybe it's not until she is being tortured that she can think clearly. But, yes.
But credit to Feyre for, I guess, figuring it out. If we're going to accept everything as truth, she figures this out, which, honestly, mad props. I'd be a flailing mess.
Can you imagine?
No.
And like,
the answer is no.
The trauma of having to approach the person that you love
with an ash knife
and be prepared to stab them in the heart.
And again, with the drama, SJM, Chef's Kiss, I love you, stabbing him. Great end to a chapter.
Also, her hands are like very bloody and sticky and slippery. that was a detail that really I was like, I get it.
Yeah, but she's never really held back with descriptions of gore. So we enter chapter
or just bodily fluids
bodily fluids in general, watery bowels and such.
Lots of vomiting.
Yeah. So of course Amarantha immediately
loses her mind anymore. I mean, more than she sort of already has.
Yeah, and I did appreciate the description of how accurate fairy bargains have to be, because this felt, when you're immediately reading it, you feel like you have the same reaction as every single fairy in that room, which is like, this is you're going back on your word, but technically she isn't. And just kind of, and there's more fairy bargains that happen in like future books. It's not really a spoiler, bargains in this world. And you just have to be so careful with how you word them. But it does fill you with a certain type of rage. I was reading this, even on the reread and the reread again, I was like, this is just beyond.
You're like, no, come on, after everything. Like,
and the fact that she didn't even go, like, send her back to her cell and continue the long, slow torture, she just went right into the, I mean, and the descriptions in this chapter were some of the worst in the SJM verse.
Yeah, so she says, Feyre completes the task. She stabs Tamlin because his heart is stone. He does not die.
I think the dagger bends.
It does. Yes, it hits his heart of stone, but he's now.
Which is small note. It's technically made of wood. Does wood bend like that?
Listen, I raised concerns to you about
the
dagger material.
I didn't have concerns about the actual like instrument of death. It was when it bent. I was like, would that happen against rock? I think it would just break. But whatever. Anyway,
like
we digress.
Splinter.
Yeah, that would be more realistic.
Well, that would be dangerous.
That would hurt.
Ouch.
Woof.
Yes. Tamlin now just has a sort of a open
gaping wound
in the center of his chest.
Yuck.
And he is incapacitated on the floor. Just
healing very slowly because of the ash.
Because the ash, and because he still doesn't have his full powers. So
Cuss is not broken.
This is uproar, right? Like, Feyre keeps in her mind, she's like, kill her, kill her, kill her. And he can't.
Literally can't.
And Amarantha's kind of panicking. And she is backed into a corner. And if we know anything about dangerous creatures being backed into a corner, they
get aggressive.
Get very aggressive. And that's exactly what happens here. She says, I don't have to release him now. I can release him whenever I want. Perhaps I'll release them when you're dead.
Stupid. You didn't.
I think she just says, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, and it's scary.
And she
walks down those stairs and she starts like breaking Feyre's bones.
I have a note that says, Amarantha's torture of Feyre is giving the Cruciatus curse.
Oh, God.
Because that's
just
what
the most painful thing you can possibly imagine.
I mean, Feyre's just in agony.
And then she's waking her up after she blacks out to put her back in more agony.
Exactly. And she said, she's like, I could feel every single one of my ribs crack. My bones were breaking. Everything was in pain. I think at one point she says, I couldn't outscream the pain. And it's just the description is, you want to beg for mercy.
I think I held my breath while I was reading this. It was so stressful.
Intense. And then at some point during this torture, Rhys...
So there are multiple points during, I think that the torture itself lost a few pages, maybe 3 or 4. And I think she references Tamlin once or twice, and he's still incapacitated. He's trying to crawl towards Amarantha, but he's still very wounded. She's constantly looking back at Rhys, and who is completely losing his mind. Like the tether on who he has presented himself to be up until this point is completely snapped. And he is screaming her name.
She says, I heard someone call my name, not someone. Rhys. And
He
then
tries to kill Amarantha.
He yelled it as if he cared. And then he kneels. She says that he goes to Tamlin and kneels down next to Tamlin, not to help Tamlin, but he's picking up the knife, and he tries to kill Amarantha. She swats him away like it's nothing. And
It's
then
with a burst of white light.
White light. And then proceeds to be surprised, apparently.
Amaranth's surprised?
She's like,
Oh, you filthy little traitor.
Filth. You've been planning this all along. Like, duh. Which context clues were like not enough for you? But again, that's just her prejudice blinding her and her prejudice becoming her weakness.
I also, like, if I had to think about it, I would think that it was probably impossible for it not to start changing once Feyre arrived. Like, once she was there, the circumstances were different.
Because it was the first time he had an opportunity to maybe
do something about his
the balance
predicament,
of power.
if you will.
Yeah.
So as white light erupts from her hand and Rhysand is thrown against the wall and he crumples to the floor, the bond goes taut between her and Rhys.
And then he tries to stand up and go for her again. And it's a very interesting contrast. You know, Rhys is physically standing up trying to fight. And I know that Tamlin's incapacitated, but the only thing Tamlin does is beg.
Yeah. He begs and he apologizes for what he said to Cliffia all those years ago, but he's kneeling at her skirts and he's begging. Yeah, it was a stark contrast there. Yeah. I think my last two notes are SJM does two things brilliantly: scenes of violence and battle, and sex scenes.
I think she also does a really good job of healing journeys, and I have more about this in the spoiler section because it requires references to other books. But she does a really good job of taking characters. And I don't even think this has to do with male or female.
No,
I think
it's Johnny's a self-discovery. She is.
I think it's actually just a very human part of life to be broken down and having to build yourself back up. I think that's one of the things that makes her character so
relatable,
so easy to love so much.
So the chapter ends with Feyre dying. I think something like snaps deep within her.
Well, no. It ends with her solving the riddle.
And then she dies. Final breath.
Because there's another montage scene.
There's another montage.
Her whole life flashes before her eyes.
Yes, you are correct.
And I did want to say that this entire third task, as I was rereading it, I realized that it's a whole new kind of loss of innocence, which was interesting because Feyre's not an innocent in any way, shape, or form, but yet still through the process of this task of committing murder. And again, it did sort of call me back and it made me think of Harry Potter and the way that they speak about murder. When you commit murder, it splits your soul.
If you do it with conviction, you do it with malice.
And even though Feyre was put in a difficult position, I do think it is worth noting that the sanctity of innocent life has been...
It's taken away from her.
It is like the fact that she has...
It's on the second one. She's like, something broke in me forever and I would never get it back.
Yes. And so it was a kind of loss of innocence, not necessarily in the traditional sense, because like we've said many times before, Feyre is not an innocent. She is a survivor. She understands what is necessary to survive in extreme situations. But this montage of her whole life leading up to this point, and you know, she remembers her first kill, her rabbit, and even after she had fed her family, saved them from starvation, she went outside and wept because she realized that a line had been crossed and she would never be the same again. And I think I think this is another moment where she realizes that she is going to be forever changed, and we can talk more about this in the spoiler section. But this whole third task just had this air of loss of innocence. It was
more of a finality about it.
Yeah, it was just a new way to experience the kind of traditional trope of loss of innocence, I think is what I'm trying to communicate, which is not something I've read before, really.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And it was just a very unique, and it was heavy.
Oh my God.
And again, I think this is something that humans, really of any race or gender or religion, can relate to, is that sometimes you just have experiences in your life that sort of mark you forever.
And you can never get rid of them, but you learn to live with them.
you can heal and you can move on and you can become stronger. You can learn important lessons from them, but there are just certain things you experience that remain a part of you for the rest of your life. And again, I think that is just what makes a part of what makes her stories and her characters so profound.
Yeah, and relatable. Yeah, I would agree with that. I like that note. So we move on to chapter 45 when
My first
death has happened.
My first note is Feyre is dead.
Feyre is dead. However, she's dead, but not quite.
Wait, and we totally forgot. She solves the riddle.
Oh yeah, she says love in her dying breath.
She was the answer to your riddle is love, and then she dies. And it's very dramatic.
This is the most dramatic.
Very dramatic. I love it.
So important
She
note
is
about
the
chapter
drama.
45 is that the entire thing is basically told through Rhysand's eyes.
Through Rhys's eyes.
Feyre's point of view, but through the physical scope of Rhys's point of view.
Yes, Feyre realizes that she is watching things unfold through the eyes of Rhysand, which is curious.
I don't know why on the first read through I totally missed that actually, and I thought that she was
I
like
did too.
floating
I just
in the
thought
air.
she was like having an
her
out of body
spirit
experience.
her
I thought
spirit
she was like
just,
in
hovering.
between. Yeah.
Yeah, not the case. So what Rhysand predicted basically happens.
Yes. So Feyre solves the riddle. She dies. Tamlin gets his powers back, and I just have to say, it was hot.
Yup, it was really
And
hot.
like I could see it unfolding in my mind.
It
like,
was no one was giving at the end of Beauty and the Beast.
Yes, that's
oh my god,
exactly-
you're so aligned always. Oh god, I'm obsessed with you.
Exactly what I was gonna say.
When the golden light is kind of surrounding him and he's untouchable.
But
she
he's
says.
like, and he's mad, and he is in a senseless fury.
Yep.
And his teeth
Exactly
get
what
long,
Rhysand was
and
trying
his
to do.
face twists up, and he gets and he just flies into a rage. And Amarantha doesn't stand
a chance.
chance.
No, she's literally toast immediately.
like,
And she knows it.
3 seconds.
Doesn't she try to beg? Like
She just
briefly,
says, please. That's all she says.
Like LOL.
I mean, I guess she had to say something, but like, yeah, not happening for you.
No. So yeah, he very violently shoves a sword through her.
Yeah, but we
head.
have to talk about this. I think he fully shifted into his.
I think he
beast
partially
form.
shifted.
I don't
know.
think
It's not
so
particularly
because
clear.
well, listen. At the very least, we know that he has his paws,
Paws?
and we know that he tears her throat out with his
jaws.
beast jaws. So at the very least, we know that he's got claws and paws and his beast head.
Oh no.
And like that on 2 humanoid legs is
Stop.
just kind of
Okay, so maybe
hard.
he was a full beast.
I think he was in his beast form. And then Lucian tosses him a sword, which he apparently
with his
catches
paw.
in his paw. I don't know why that was so hard for me to picture.
Well, it's because paws don't have opposable thumbs.
yeah.
They have 2 claws. Not the
Yeah,
same
those
thing.
don't do the same thing.
Oh, yeah. No, that was very tough for me too.
I was picturing like Simba, like cartoon Simba, like trying to catch a sword in his paw, and it was not working for me. But maybe I just lack imagination.
No, it was. I think it's tough.
Yeah.
But it all happens very quickly.
It happens really fast, and
he shifts back.
And then he shifts back, and he just immediately runs to Feyre and
who is dead.
is cradling her body, in his arms, and it was
This is a very tough scene. Like, it is
and
devastating.
he's sobbing. And for all of our criticism of Tamlin, at least he's
This is the appropriate reaction.
At least he's emotionally secure enough to cry in front of his friends and his peers.
And then what happens? But the High Lord of the Autumn Court comes over, followed
We can
by...
only infer.
No, it is him that comes over
That's
first.
his name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the High Lord of the Autumn Court comes over,
Ignores
followed by...
Lucian.
Yes.
Oh, wait, we have to... we can't not talk about
but
Lucian.
Lucian throws the sword.
Lucian threw the sword. Lucian is crying also. Lucian is devastated.
Because Feyre is Lucian's friend.
Feyre is his friend. And
Almost like a little sister at this point.
And I'm sure that many people in the crowd, amongst, the shock and sort of awe of all of it, like this would be a very moving thing to watch a human.
Even someone that you don't personally...
I think this probably altered a lot of perspectives in Prythian about humans
in general.
So this is just a very
Powerful moment.
very powerful moment, very emotional moment, and Lucian is crying
As always.
and we just really wish we could give him a hug.
Amongst other things.
Yeah.
Yep. So The Autumn Court High Lord comes over and he offers up a little. He holds out his
Says
hand.
nothing, by the way.
Yeah, doesn't say one thing. Holds out like a little ball of power, I guess.
I picture it like a teeny tiny little star.
Yeah, little cute one.
Yeah.
And he puts it like into her, like her chest absorbs it.
Do you know what I picture? A lot of Harry Potter references
No,
for me today.
yes.
The light from the Deluminator.
Yep, I was thinking the same thing.
That's what we're working with.
So the order is Autumn Court High Lord, then the Summer Court High Lord comes over, then Winter, Dawn, Day, and Night. And then, before the Night Court, before Reese comes over, he says something pretty important. And I believe the line is, well, for what she gave. And then he says, "Will bestow."
Just read it word for word because I summarized it in a note.
She says, "For what she gave," Rhysand said, extending a hand, "will bestow what our predecessors have granted to few before," which I have some follow-up questions about.
Don't we all?
He paused. "That makes us even," he added.
To Tamlin.
I felt the twinkle of his humor as he opened his hand and let the seed of light fall on me. And then Tamlin says, "I love you," and puts the final little ball of light into Feyre's
his hand
chest.
on her heart.
It was cute.
It was.
And then she comes back as a high fae in chapter 46, which would be...
I mean, I'm not...
You just say the note that you said, Elliot, because it's funny.
I would like to say one other thing first.
Okay.
I would love to wake up tomorrow as a high fae.
I mean, wouldn't we all? It'd be ideal to not have to live in this world.
But upon rereading this...
And I haven't even... It would be a little disarming at first.
I haven't even watched Twilight recently. But rereading this, it was giving Bella waking up post-transition as a vampire.
The only difference is that all of Bella's injuries were gone completely. And
correct.
Feyre
No,
still
I'm not
has,
saying
like,
it's the exact same type of transition. I'm just saying
it's some of the same elements.
The way she's like, oh my God, like my body felt strong. Oh, I looked at the chandelier and I had never noticed
Well, Jessica,
like,
I'm going to go out on a limb here
many
and say
prisms
that
of light.
SJM has probably read Twilight.
And as we've said, this is another reason why we love her, because she is not only an author of this genre, she is also a fan of this genre.
Yes.
And that makes us all one.
Yes. Makes us bigger fans of hers.
Yes. It was just kind of funny because I just couldn't help. I was almost disappointed with myself. I was like, no, don't bring that in here.
But you can't not.
But then
sometimes.
I can't not.
There are so
once you
many
have
scenes,
the thought, I can't
there are so many
unthink
scenes
it.
in these books where you're like, that is, like, she has drawn inspiration directly from other movies and books that we know and love.
Totally.
So she discovers she's a high fae, and then she turns around, she sees Tamlin's face, which the
Oh my God.
description
Oh my God.
lost one paragraph.
Wait, is
Go
that
ahead.
you're saying that's like long or short?
That's totally short.
Oh, okay.
But whatever. I mean, it's still good. He's like, has a strong jaw and like a straight nose and a high brow. He's hot.
Okay, but
And emerald green eyes.
so she looks. He like kind of like she like slowly turns around, and then she's like looks at the mask on the floor, and then she like slowly.
Looks
I don't.
up at him.
I don't even think she does a pan up. He takes her chin,
Which is one of
not
problematic.
fair.
It shouldn't be allowed.
As I was,
should not be allowed.
I was doing a re-listen as I was getting ready for this episode. I was
Yep.
doing my makeup, and he's like, and he took her chin in his forefinger and thumb, and I just stopped and I went, hot. I'm doing, hot. It's so.
It is. It's a micro trope. I feel like
I feel like it's just a move.
You think so?
Yeah, it's a move, because even boys in the real world can do that, and they don't know the power that it has. And
don't.
if you're listening to
There
this,
are certain
please
things.
use this knowledge for good and not evil. Like
The chin
hold,
the back of the neck,
the face,
and the brow
really
kiss.
just like
the brow kiss.
Yeah.
Problems.
I don't think they understand
No, they don't.
what it does,
Nope.
and maybe they shouldn't. Maybe it's
we
better
shouldn't
that
have.
they
Maybe we
don't.
shouldn't have announced it.
And so all I'm gonna say is that if you are
A man.
a man or a boy listening to this, please use this knowledge for good instead of evil.
Wield it well.
Yes. With great power comes great responsibility.
So, important note that the actor disappears immediately.
Oh yeah, no. So this is It's almost like an epilogue.
It really
everything that happens after this is almost kind of like the epilogue because it happens sort
in
of
a montage
disjointedly.
It's all very quick.
And then Feyre and Tamlin have their reunion finally, but it's really, there's just this kind of weight over it.
It's like almost like there's a sheen or like a cling film is like blocking like her experiencing joy, because first of all she's reeling from the trauma of what just happened to her. Like this literally just happened.
She cannot bring herself to feel joyful. Like she cannot, because this is everything she has just been through, which is understandable.
So the actor disappears right away. Lucian's brothers disappear right away, and there are like meetings and things happening between the Spring Court High Lord, other High Lords,
lots of logistics.
There's a lot of
that are like needing to be taken care of.
And then Tamlin at last notices Feyre's discomfort as this is all happening. He takes her back to her room, and then she's, he's tending to the last of her mortal wounds, I guess.
Yes.
I did have one note about, did she and Tamlin have sex?
Yes.
It felt similar in the fact that she used sex with Isaac to escape from a lot of her feelings.
Yeah, no, this was very different from the way that their physical chemistry had been up to this point was very pure almost. And this felt like she was using him. It felt like she was
to forget and to escape.
And she even says it.
Yeah,
like
she does.
he draws a breath and he says Feyre, and she says, I knew what he was going to say. I knew what he wanted to talk about it. And she shuts it down. Which
I think, given the fact that this happened literally hours ago, is okay. I think that there are some conversations that need to happen soon. But in the moment, yes, that was kind of a little takeaway that I had from that scene. And then she wakes up in bed with Tamlin, and she feels something pulling at her middle.
Behind her navel, I believe, is the phrase.
Her belly button. and she knows where she's going before she knows where.
Have belly buttons?
I believe so, yes.
It would be weird if they
Yeah, it'd be weird. Yeah.
Okay.
Almost like aliens. No, thank you.
They're not aliens. No.
They're very beautiful.
Well, sometimes aliens can be beautiful.
Yes, I'm sure.
I believe you watched Man of Steel recently.
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay,
great. So she is being pulled over to... You also watched Man of Steel recently.
I never said that I didn't. That's why I was surprised that you would make the implication that aliens are not beautiful.
Well, I wasn't thinking about Henry Cavill, to be clear, when I said that.
I'm just saying Superman is technically an alien.
Okay, so she is going towards Rhysand. He has summoned her through the bargain bond.
Yes. To be clear.
Yes. I also just forgot that she hasn't seen the sun in months. Like, that was very startling, which makes total sense on the reread. And I was like, that would just be so, like, what? Do you
I
know
actually
how much
kind of
joy?
forgive all of her depression.
Literally same.
Yeah.
Because do you know how depressed I get when I can't even go on a run once a day? Like, seeing like just seeing, like, having fresh air and seeing the sun and being deprived
Human beings
of
are
that.
meant to be a creature of
daylight.
The ground, not the underground.
The ground?
The ground. I'm trying not to knock my microphone, okay?
So that's like a little note that I had that I forgot that she hasn't seen the sun in months.
It would be disorienting.
I also missed this tiny little detail that Jurian's bone and eye, like, she calls out somehow missing.
They're missing. I caught that too.
So just wanted to throw that in there.
And the Ator took the spell book back to Hybrid.
And then she has a conversation with Rhys where he just seems depleted of all fight now. And he's like, I wanted to say goodbye to you before I left.
Oh, it's interesting. It seemed kind of peaceful to me.
I think that he's depleted.
It just seemed very calm.
And he says, I wanted to say goodbye.
She seems depleted. He, to me, seemed very even keel. Like, very eyes on the future kind of thing.
Well, he's about to go back to his court.
Yes. Well, and she asks him if he's going to fly because his wings are proudly out on display.
And she finds out that he loves to fly, which she had never thought to ask him before. And he's about to disappear.
Well, I have one other note. He asks her, how does it feel to be high fae? And she says, my body is different, but my heart is the same. And I sometimes... She said,
this is one of my favorite lines.
And she said, I wonder if it would have been easier if my heart could have changed also. you know,
he
because
says,
it's just too hard to bear. And he says, be glad of your human heart, Feyre. Pity those who feel nothing at all.
Yes. Oh, I love that line.
And it's such a beautiful line.
It really is. God, SJM is so good.
And in the moment, she can't even accept it because she is so depleted and fractured.
Yeah.
And then as he is departing.
And as he departs, as on his way up from his bow, his eyes lock on her and I think here I'm going to have the line. And his eyes locked on mine, wide and wild, and his nostrils flared. Shock, pure shock.
Not the flaring nostrils.
Shock, pure shock, flashed across his features at whatever he saw on my face, and he stumbled back a step. Actually stumbled. What is, I began, and he disappeared. Simply disappeared, not a shadow in sight, into the crisp air.
Always with the drama.
So much drama. That happens. And then she goes back to Tamlin.
And then they walk back through the tunnel. They go back to the spring court. And I will say, when she sees the manor again and they're standing on a hill or something, looking out over spring court, and she sees two little shiny figures.
Alice's sons. Oh my
Nephews.
God. Nephews, sorry, yes. They were the figures who earlier wanted to come out to play. And she couldn't see them.
And she was so
they
freaked
were like
out by them.
sprightly beings. And I loved that. Yes, it was such a little callback to a simpler time.
Out loud. I was like,
totally missed that on the first read around.
I was like, that's totally who that was.
I know. I have exactly the same note.
And then the final scene is Tamlin and Feyre are standing there for quite some time.
Do they kiss
just
here?
sort of taking, they have a kiss.
A kiss on a hill.
Do you have a kiss? They have a little kiss.
Little kiss.
And then Lucian tells them that it's time for dinner. So they have to go inside. Hopefully it's not for peas and nondescript
Oh God,
fish.
here we go again.
So one last little note about the food. But so that is where we leave our characters at the beginning of book 1 of the ACOTAR series.
It's been a wild ride.
Seemingly now,
all is well.
Everything is gonna get better.
Anyways, thank you so much for listening, you guys.
Yes, and like we mentioned before, we are gonna shift our focus to Crescent City as we await the highly anticipated release of House of Flame and Shadow.
Oh my God.
But
don't forget that if you're strategizing with your friends, that you can get a different bonus chapter depending on where you order it from.
Yes,
Just
please.
PSA.
Please visit SJM socials and websites for all of that information. But I do just want to make the note that even though we are temporarily shifting our focus to books 1 and 2 of Crescent City,
we will be back.
We have every intention of coming back and going through the rest of
Fury.
ACOTAR. Very excited to reread Mist and Fury. And someday
we'll get, I can't even. It's
going
to be.
We will tackle Throne of Glass. That might have to be like a book an episode.
Yeah, maybe we can split it into 2 when we get to the end.
Kingdom of Ash might have to be like 3 episodes.
If not 4. Anyway, we digress. Thank you so much. We're going to plug our socials one more time.
Yep.
We got our Instagram at _greatest_genre. TikTok, The Greatest Genre. We're on Twitter at Greatest Genre. I think we actually do have a Facebook group too that's like attached to our Instagram somehow, but I don't know how to update it. And you can email us at thegreatestgenre@gmail.com. We've had a couple of really great emails pertaining to
pertaining to fan casts. So we are going to be doing the mini episode about the interview takeaways, that's really focusing on House of Flame and Shadow. So that might actually be kind of our first Season 2 Crescent City content. But we do have something fun that we are planning for the end of Season 1.
And so if you haven't been checking us out on YouTube, you might want to pivot to that for this episode.
Yes, we are going to be doing a fan cast special.
And it's going to be very giggly.
There will be we're going to be using our office printer, and we will be printing out fan art. We will be printing out headshots of different actors. There will be lively debate about who makes a better cast. It's going to be a lot of fun. So definitely
really
stay tuned for
us for
that. And please send us your suggestions. Yes. We've gotten a couple so far, and they have brought us so much delight. So please, please, please send us your fan cast ideas. We would love to hear them and incorporate them possibly into our fan cast special.
Well said, Jessica. All right, everybody. We will see you if you have read everything. Remember, we will see you for part 2 of episode 9.
The deep dive.
Bye-bye for now.
Thanks very much.